Hi, I'm Tania Van der Stap, Principal Director of Align Risk Management. And you've guessed it, I'm from Australia. By way of background, I'm the author of Productive Safety Management, which was published by Butterworth Heinemann in 2003. So you'd be asking, what's the relevance of a book from 2003? That's 15 years ago. This book put together a fully integrated management system by which risk is managed to pursue production, quality work and safety incident mitigation concurrently. And there are two key tools in productive safety management. One is the alignment fallacy, which explains that having a safety first policy doesn't necessarily turn into an operational reality. And the second one is the entropy model, which explains the nature of risk and how risk negatively impacts production, the quality of the work undertaken, and businesses' capacity to prevent safety incidents. So, what's the transition now between 2003 and 2018? In 2018, the American Society of Safety Professionals republished the Entropy model in the chapter that I submitted, Chapter 29, Risk Leadership, a Multidisciplinary Approach. So there is increasing relevance of the Entropy model, particularly in the context of the two key areas that drove me to write Productive Safety Management in the first place. One is the need to prevent fatalities, serious injuries and debilitating illnesses. And the other one is to ensure continuity of production and output of quality work. So this presentation is not about selling books. In this presentation, I'm providing you with a lead-in to an introduction to the Entropy model, which is the next video that I'll do for you. Thank you. Hi, I'm Tania Van der Stap from Align Risk Management. This presentation is an introduction to the Entropy model. The model was originally published in Productive Safety Management by Butterworth Heinemann in 2003, and it was again published by the American Society of Safety Professionals in 2018 in their book Safety Leadership and Professional Development. The Entropy model is not as simply a safety incident causation model. It looks at the nature of risk and the impact of risk on a business's capacity to deliver production, quality output, and prevent safety incidents. And it explains the nature of risk. There are two types of risk. One is residual risk and the other is entropic risk. Residual risk is understood as the risk that's left over after a business has put all the controls in place. The model explains that residual risks come from the work processes, technologies, physical environment and people used to carry out workplace activities or tasks. In addition to that, there are entropic risks, and these are caused by the degradation of those systems that combine to carry out tasks, specifically the work processes, technologies, physical environment and people. Entropic risk is a different concept when it comes to risk management, and it's not currently sufficiently discussed. It is the tendency of all systems to shift to a state of disorder or lack of predictability. It can be a gradual or a rapid decline into that disorder. And therefore the adjective which I've come up with is entropic, having a tendency to change from a state of order to a state of disorder. Residual risk is a threat to safety and it also reduces efficiency. So the easiest way to visualise that is to compare, say, an open cut mine with an underground mine. Underground mining has much higher residual risks because of access and egress issues, ventilation, ground control, etc. It is much more difficult to operate an underground mine than it is an open cut mine. Residual risk cannot be eliminated or reduced in the short term because of technological and cost constraints. So you can't just keep throwing money at making a workplace or equipment safer. There are constraints around that. And what the model explains is that you have your residual risk shown as the green block, and over and above that you have that red line, which is the probability of injury or damage or production loss due to residual risk. So there is no such thing as zero risk. In addition, systems have a tendency to degrade, and as they degrade, shown by the dashed blue line, the probability of injury or damages or production losses goes up. Entropic risk is a threat to safety, and it also affects efficiency. It can be highly variable, and it causes a rising risk over and above the residual risk. So these two risk types are actually combined in the entropy model, which I'll show you now. So on the left-hand side, we have those four systems that combine when tasks are carried out. And the blue block is the perfect world. In the perfect world, you'd have perfect safety, production, output, and quality. And you can see that the level of risk in the red line is at the 0 point. But unfortunately, that's not the real world. In the real world, we have the residual risk, as you can see there in the green block, for which there is always the risk of injury, damage, or production loss, shown by that red line on top of it. In addition to that, systems have a tendency to degrade, as shown by the dashed blue line. Now, I could have done the red rising entropic risk as a straight line, but I really wanted to emphasize that things can turn to custard or a state of chaos pretty quickly. And that escalates when you have degradation of systems to the point where production losses, quality deficiencies, and safety incidents become inevitable. So you would see that red line rising and rising and rising until those losses become self-evident. What the model tells us what we need to do is at this point, or better still even before then, is to take corrective action whenever we see areas of degradation. So corrective action is going to turn that trend around. But for instance, if you have a workshop and you see that the housekeeping is really poor and you go in and take corrective action, will that corrective action prevent future entropic risk? No, the nature of risk is that systems will have a tendency to degrade again. So how do we rectify that? And how do we act proactively to address that? The model tells us that we need to implement maintenance practices. Maintenance applies to how we conduct and plan our work processes. Maintenance applies to technology, the physical environment, and our people. So what we're doing, as you can see with the dashed blue line, is raising the quality of those systems to the point where we achieve optimal safety, production output, and quality. So that's where businesses should be aiming to be. But we also know that we need to be very careful of complacency and failing to keep up our corrective actions and maintenance practices, because what will happen is if we don't sustain those habits, degradation will kick in again, and the probability of production losses, quality deficiencies, and safety incidents will rise again. So the entropy model is important as a strategic driver for how a business operates, but it's also an important behavioural driver at the operational level. It tells us to take corrective action when we see areas of degradation. It tells us don't accept the status quo and keep taking corrective actions that repeat over again. Rather, look at how we can implement maintenance practices to ensure that that degradation doesn't occur. The third one is we have to accept that residual risk is inherent danger, and the only way we can manage that is to stay alert to residual risks. So we need to include inherent dangers in our language rather than saying we've now reached as low as reasonably practicable with our risk and now we're safe. No, we're not. The residual risk is still there. And then the fourth step in managing risk is to reduce residual risk over time through capital improvements and technological changes. So this is the entropy model, showing residual risks and entropic risks and the cycles that businesses go through and the 4 steps to managing those risks. So this model applies to those 4 systems that businesses use to generate production. But in addition to that, the model could be expanded to look at degradation of cultural factors such as leadership focus, the organisational culture, development of unhealthy subcultures, and importantly, creep to production centricity. The way we should be managing our businesses is to manage risk to achieve production, quality, and safety incident mitigation concurrently. For more information, you can contact me, and here are the references to the entropy model. Thank you.